Plus, should the Obama administration negotiate with terrorists? The government reportedly wants to win freedom for an American prisoner of war by handing over 5 Taliban militants from Guantanamo Bay.
Hello and good morning. I'm Michaela Pereira.
And I'm John Berman. Those stories and more right now at this hour. Meanwhile, a prisoner swap between the U.S. and the Taliban is reportedly on the table. Now, this was first reported by the Daily Beast, picked up by the Washington Post today. It says the Obama administration is trying to trade 5 Guantanamo Bay prisoners for U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl.
Bergdahl was captured in Afghanistan back in June of 2009. At the time, he was just 23 years old. Now, authorities believe he is being held in Pakistan by the Haqqani network. Joining us from Washington, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army VanHipp, and on the phone, CNN military analyst, retired Major General James Spider Marks. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us. First, Van, let's talk to you. Should the U.S. negotiate with the Taliban to bring our soldier home, despite a long-standing policy we've had to not negotiate with terrorists?
We should be working night and day to bring our people back home. Never leave a soldier behind. But negotiating with the terrorists and trying to strike a deal with the Taliban is the wrong way to go about it. When we've done this before, it has come back to bite us. Don't forget that the current chief of operations for the Taliban in the southern part of Afghanistan, who's caused us all kinds of problems the last few years, Mullah Abdullah Zakir, is a former Gitmo prisoner that we released back to the battlefield, and it's come back to bite us. This is the wrong way to go about it.
John McCain, this has been going on for a few years, and John McCain has called these prisoners in Guantanamo some of the worst murderers in the world. They've been targeting Americans. Spider, nevertheless, you think it's a good idea to enter these discussions with the Taliban. Why?
Well, John, we have a history of being able to dance pretty effectively along the edges of the declaration, which states that we won't negotiate with terrorists. We have had communications with all forms of bad guys, to include the Taliban, in the past. And certainly the results have not always been what we would prefer. But in this particular case, I have to tell you what this administration is really posturing itself for is a complete departure from Afghanistan and having a presence in the region through which we could possibly get this soldier returned moving down the road. But the clock is ticking. We're moving into a dead stop where the United States, if it has, and again I have to underline, if it has any credibility at all in the region, it's now quite questionable that we'll be able to get this great young soldier back if we don't do something in the very near term.
Van, I think it is clear that time is running out. I know the Obama administration is desperately wanting to get him home before U.S. forces leave Afghanistan entirely this year. We've seen evidence that the Taliban provided a video of him. He does not look like he's in good shape, but he is still alive. Give us an idea of the other options that are available.
If we go through with the Taliban prisoner swap right now, we are putting every American soldier deployed all over the world at risk. We're sending a message to terrorist organizations all over the world that it's okay to capture an American soldier, that America will deal with you. That is the wrong message to send. I think we need to give the green light to the special ops and let them do their job quietly and methodically, as they have done so well in the past. And I'm encouraged by the fact that in the last month we have intercepted this video, and we didn't know anything in the last 3 years. Our intel is getting better. I think we're getting closer to his actual location.
Spider, I want to put you on the spot here because last week you were on our show. We were talking about the fact that the Afghan government was releasing prisoners, 65 prisoners. You thought that was an awful idea. Yet now, when it's the Obama administration releasing prisoners in U.S. custody, it's a good idea. Isn't that a double standard there?
Of course it's a double standard, John. I mean, this is not unusual, nor should we be surprised by this. Look, the United States has been holding these folks in Guantanamo for quite some time. They have gone through very, very specifically what the charges are, what their activities are. And if the United States figures, and if our legal system figures that the release of these individuals will guarantee the release of a soldier, and that is into the details about how it can be done, it's an opportunity and an option that we should avail ourselves of. Absolutely, it's a double standard.
Okay, but there's one thing, and maybe I'll put this to Van. This is not the first time that we've tried to negotiate with them to let us bring our soldier home. Last time around, Taliban broke off the negotiations and the talks. It makes one wonder, how can you trust them, especially when we are on a time crunch? You want to get this young man home before U.S. troops come home.
Well, and if you go back and look what we did 2 years ago, that should be a red flag to us. In the negotiations, we offered to release 1 or 2 just to make sure that they would not go back to the battlefield. Guess what? The Taliban completely cut off negotiations. That should tell you all you need to know. When you negotiate with terrorists, when you release terrorist prisoners like this, all the studies are showing that at least 30% are going back to the battlefield. We're finding out right now that you've got former Gitmo prisoners working with Islamist rebels in Syria. It's a tough situation the administration is in. But when you negotiate with terrorists and when you release terrorist prisoners, it will come back to bite you. We need to learn the lesson of history, and I'm afraid it puts American soldiers at increased risk all over the world.
Well,
VanHipp, General Spider Marks, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And I like what Spider said right there. He said, of course, it's a double standard.
Yeah.
Diplomacy, is not an easy thing,
No,
and not when there's an American soldier's life on the line.
Bottom line, everybody agrees we need to get him home. How they do it is the sensitive and difficult thing. We're going to take a short break here.